So I appreciate everyone joining. Welcome to our webinar about Cleo Integration Cloud Gateway. And my name is Jacob Olson. I head our solutions group here at Cleo. Been here for 12 plus years. And I have quite a bit of background in the technology that I believe most of you use today, whether that's LexiCom, VLTrader, Harmony, our data movement technology that resides on premises. So my goal today is I want to walk you through some of the capabilities of our CIC Gateway solution, help you understand what not only the functionality and of course how some of the comparison might shake up. Everyone has a unique implementation of the on-premises technology, so I think it's fair for all of you to get a good understanding of how our cloud platform works. And then, of course, I want to talk through some of the migration steps because this is it's no joke. I mean, this is the lifeblood of most of our customers' business, and it's the front door that a lot of your customers, suppliers, carriers, shippers, all of the external entities that you talk through, use this technology. So we need to make sure that if a move is going to be made, that you know what you're signing up for, and that there's a clear picture of the steps. The beauty is that because this is Cleo to Cleo, it's a very easy transition. The upgrade um, is pretty minimal. But because we're changing infrastructure, there's it's a non-trivial task. So again, we'll talk through that when we get to it. But anyway, so I appreciate all of you joining. Let's get started. So what I want to do first is describe the CIC Gateway functionality at a very high level. So let me going to talk through this I'm going to talk from right to left here, maybe a little bit backwards, but I'm going to talk right to left. So on the right side of this diagram would be anything external to you. So what we kind of break this out as is, our platform sits in the middle, and on the right side of the diagram would be external, like I said before, customers, suppliers, really anybody that you do business with externally that speaks some flavor of SFTP, AS2, one of the protocols that's supported within LexiCom, VLTrader, etc. Um, Today, where you have all of the technology deployed internally or in your own private cloud, our platform sits in Cleo's cloud. So it's a traditional software as a service technology. It sits in our platform. We provide all of these different protocols. So you'll see here a few of these with AS2, FTP, FTPS, SFTP, ODET FTP, Rosetta Net, email. So basically, we have protocol support that is very similar to what you might be used to internally. And the beauty for us is that, we not only support those client protocols, but in our cloud platform in Gateway, we actually have server-side functionality too. And this is a point that's kind of often missed. So especially for you LexiCom customers, where today, if you wanted to host an SFTP server as an example and have somebody connect to you versus you connecting to them, that's not possible today in LexiCom. That's a feature that we didn't ever enable in LexiCom. And VLTrader and Harmony, that exists. So again, it's a world that we know really well. In Gateway, we just simply offer it. It's just part of the platform. We find that customers have if you're doing again some kind of FTP, SFTP type communication, that having both the client side and the server side functionality is just it's table stakes today. So again, we just offer it. And the beauty is that all these flows then can go through our cloud platform. We manage all the infrastructure, we manage all the scale and redundancy and everything, all the upgrades, everything is part of that. And your left side of this diagram would be your systems. So again, whether you are interfacing with just a folder that your customer service team speaks to, if you're dropping files for a backend translator to pick up and insert into an ERP, for example. If we drop a file into a location and have another internal iPaaS type system pick it up, no problem. Again, for us, we can actually mimic a lot of the same patterns here, because what we do, even from our cloud, even though this exists in our cloud, right, we kind of take the engine off of your infrastructure and put it up into our cloud. We have this little agent piece here, and this is a small little install that can sit in your infrastructure. It's on a Windows or Linux box that it runs. And it's headless. So the beauty is it's a little install script, you install it once, and then everything's managed from the cloud. So now we have a really secure path to actually communicate with these backend structures and systems. So again, if you have an inbox, for example, in an AS2 connection, where when your customer places orders, as an example, and they drop into an inbox, we can map this agent to that same inbox. And so when the AS2 connection comes in from a partner, goes through our cloud, it would ultimately deliver that file into the exact same folder. Doesn't have to be exactly the same. We can modify these. We can connect to any infrastructure, any systems that you want us to on the back end, as long as we have access and we can connect to it. But again, it's a really nice, clean way to not only mimic a lot of the functionality that you have within the platform, but then also follow a lot of the same patterns that you've set up using that agent. And the agent, again, is really super basic. It's meant to be really minimal because it's just facilitating communication to and from your infrastructure in our cloud. So again, all of that's actually configured. I'll show it in just a little bit when we show some product, but just know that again, all of that's built in. Even though we're moving all of this up to our cloud, we still can facilitate those the communications and integrations to your backend systems that you've come to expect. And that doesn't have to be your infrastructure. It could be a cloud system. We have things like S3, Google Cloud storage bucket. We have Azure Blob storage as well. So if another example might be, maybe you don't actually have a backend file system. Maybe you just speak to a cloud storage location, Azure Blob, for example, which is no problem for us. Again, we just simply can take it from our cloud as files come in or go out and communicate to that cloud storage on the backend, just like it was a file store. So really clean infrastructure, really clean process that we can support within the cloud. And then the beauty is that once all of these configurations are set up, we get a lot of real clean benefits from this. So especially things like transfer reporting, logging, error notifications. Again, a lot of things that you either use today in the current setup or potentially lack. So things like LexiCom, it does great logging, but it doesn't really do summarized transfer reporting. We do both in the cloud, and you get those natively. So again, we'll talk feature function differentiation in just a moment, but just know that again, this is a really full-featured data movement platform, and our customers use this as again the gateway for their business, just like you might use the existing technology as the front door of your business today. The other thing to note is we do still support things like internal integration. So I believe that a couple folks on the call here are using things like AS400, iSeries, IBMI, whatever you like to term it, whatever generation of that technology you use. Easy for us, no problem. In fact, so the agent can actually speak directly to, we can mount like IFS onto that agent if we wanted to. We can speak, to and from those systems. We do also have ability within the cloud. So it would be the full-blown Cleo integration cloud with not just the gateway side, but also the integration side. We could actually speak to database structures, for example. So if we know how to take in, say, inbound EDI document, we know how to map that to a database on the back end. So we've got a few different ways to actually integrate to iSeries, but especially if you have existing, Gentran or whatever it is that runs on the back end, no problem at all. We can simply, place files for you to pick up from the iSeries. In addition, because we have all of these protocols on the that are offered within the cloud, you could connect to us and pull those files down as well. So again, there's a number of different patterns that we can enable here. They're all equally the same. They function exactly the same, even if you're reaching out and pulling files from us. All doable, no problem at all. And certainly if you need a little bit of guidance or have any questions, either ask it here or follow up after the call. And the last thing I want to point out here real quick is, we do have the ability to even do some internal communications. So if, for example, your backend system speaks FTP, but it's, something that's buried and not exposed to the internet, no problem. Again, that agent lets us actually speak FTP, SFTP, API. It's got a few different proxy protocols that we can run. So even if there's some internal communication that we have to facilitate, easy stuff for us. That's all built in. And even if we just have to simply like move files around, copy from one location to another, maybe execute some post transfer commands. So, we have some customers that run maybe like SAP internally. And when an IDOC comes in, we need to execute like start RFC as an example, just a really basic example. But if you've got scripts you need to execute or commands you need us to run, no problem at all. We can run those as part of our flows. Again, because we can actually communicate with some of your internal infrastructure here as well. So that's the kind of high level of how Gateway works. Again, I'll show it in just a second, and I think it's pretty self-explanatory in terms of setting up these different, we call them endpoints. So an endpoint might be a customer connection, or it might be a folder location that we're picking up and dropping off to. So we can set these endpoints up and then build flows between them, a lot very similar to the actions that we run within LexiCom today. So again, we'll show that in just a second, but hopefully this kind of gives you a sense for how Gateway sets up and some of the capabilities at a very high level. So the other thing I want to talk about is, so it's great that we can kind of paint a vision of future state, but how do we get there? So let me talk through a little bit of the migration process. So this is going to be unique for everyone, so I'm going to speak in somewhat general terms, but I think you'll kind of get the point of the steps that are taken here to actually move to the cloud. So first of all, we have to make sure we communicate with your internal infrastructure because the current technology runs on-prem, and because you've got a lot of internal systems that are fully within your control, and you're going to move that engine up to our cloud. It changes the dynamics a little bit of who owns which systems and who's configuring what. By the way, all of this is self-service. So if you want to go in and modify and set up all of this from start to finish, you're more than welcome to. Of course, we offer professional services with this. So if you want our team to set this up, if you want our team to manage this on an ongoing basis, we have all of those options available to you. But most of our customers in the Gateway world, choose to self-serve this because again, you're fairly used to managing those configurations in general. We have to make sure we communicate to and from your backend. So whether we're setting up an agent and we're communicating to setting up those folders that you currently use that are pickup and drop off locations between your backend, that might be an example. Another, again, might be maybe FTP. Well, I would obviously recommend either FTP-S or SFTP, and you can communicate that to our cloud. Again, basically just establishing ground to cloud connectivity between our cloud and your infrastructure wherever that might exist. So that's the first step. We need to make sure that we can actually communicate and that we can set up those backend flows. Second piece is that we want to configure those connections, mailboxes, basically the profiles that you use today or new connections you need to set up. So whether that's an AS2 connection in a mailbox, whether that's an SFTP type connection, again, all those protocols we talked about before, they're all available to you in Gateway, and we want to set those up so we can start doing some testing. Because if we can set these up in our cloud and especially have that backend connectivity set up, it lets us do some smoke testing, make sure that flows are running correctly, because the next step is actually going to be communicating with customers. Now, this is probably the longest pole in the tent, and it's actually not the most work for you. It's frankly the most work for your partners. And it's not even that much work because we can reuse all the credentials. We can reuse passwords if you want us to. Of course, if passwords have been used for 10 years, maybe we should recycle those anyway. But things like certificates and keys for authentication, we would reuse those, assuming that they still have some lifespan left in them. So from a partner perspective, they don't have to change everything, but they do need to change a couple of things. One would be the URL, of course, because today where they connect to like b2b.customerxyz.com, and they go directly to your infrastructure today and come through your internet connection. They now need to reroute that traffic to go through our platform. So the Cleo gateway here in the middle. So that would be set up. It'd be your own environment that you get your own URL. So it would be now customerabc.cleointegration.cloud. So from a setup perspective, really straightforward. If the customer does any kind of like IP whitelisting, for example, same thing. They just need to update the whitelisting configurations on their side. So it's pretty minimal in terms of changes that they have to make, but it does require that they're responsive, that they actually go through and make those changes, and that they can issue some tests. So again, this is the piece that usually takes the longest, only because of some back and forth communication. We're talking minutes of work, frankly. There's not some huge amount of effort, but it mostly does require that we have a little bit of patience to work with those partners. Same thing. If you want to work with the partners directly, absolutely no problem. If you want Cleo to do that on your behalf and run some campaign management, again, we have all of those services available. You certainly don't need them, but we do have those that you could contract with us if needed. Um, the last piece that I'll mention there too is, from once those partners are connected and set up, normally we'd want customers to have at least a production and a non-production environment. So today, if you only run one instance of LexiCom, of course we want to make that a little bit more secure and reliable. So of course that means something like a stage environment, for example, that you might call it dev or UAT or sandbox, whatever you want to call it, basically a non-production environment that we could connect to and confirm all the integration. And then once we have everything set up and confirmed in the non-production environment, we roll it into prod and you can start transferring data just like you do today. And you can even run these in tandem, so it's a really clean migration process. And again, the effort here is pretty minimal, but there is effort nonetheless. We need to make sure that this is done correctly. And again, you guys are welcome to run this on your own, or you can lean on Cleo for some assistance here as well. Okay, so the other thing that I wanted to quickly flash before I get to product is just a little bit of differentiation between the technologies. So I chose LexiCom here because I think the most of the attendees today are running LexiCom on-prem today. So again, Lex is a great product. It's been in use as an agent for quite, I mean, 20 plus years at this point for some customers. So it's a really, really strong technology. The beauty is that we took a lot of the core engine and kind of cloudified it over the last 7, 8 years, and which turned into CIC Gateway. So what you're getting is a lot of the same engine, a lot of the same capabilities, but with some great enhancements. So the beauty is, not only do we get things like I mentioned server-side protocols like SFTP mailboxes that we can host without additional technology. We get a really nice web interface. So you'll see in a moment, I'm just going to pull up my browser. That's how we manage all of Gateway, is just through the browser. We don't have a thick client we have to worry about, or like remote desktop sessions that we have to worry about to get into the server. Again, all of that just goes away. We just simply use a browser to manage all these configurations. Transfer reporting is a big one for me, because if I want to just see if a file came in or went out, especially if I'm a non-technical user, like in customer support, customer success these days, I mean, even IT, if I don't know the system all that well, I just want to do a quick search. In LexiCom, that's not all that easy to do. You can absolutely find what you're looking for, but it takes a little bit of know-how. In Gateway, it's meant for both the very technical personas, but also the kind of lesser technical folks who might want to just get some detail out of the system very quickly. Again, I'll show that in just a second. We, of course, have things like SOC 2 and SOC 3. And again, if you care about that, great, we can go into detail. If that doesn't mean much to you, no problem. Just know we carry a bunch of compliances and security policies that should help, make sure that your data, your infrastructure, again, the some really critical infrastructure for you that runs in Cleo's cloud, that it's secure and that it's stable and all those things. We do provide this at a 99.95% uptime. Our historic uptimes are much better than that, but that's the contracted uptime policy. So again, if you have questions there, let us know. But we basically follow industry standard and try to make sure that this is an always up piece of technology that you can lean on. So, okay, I'm going to skip over a bunch of these again, not to go through all the line by line by line, but certainly if you have questions on any of these, you happy to raise your hand or send a chat message if you'd like. Otherwise, what I'm going to do is switch screens here, and I want to take a look at Gateway and show you what this looks like. So let me flip over. And like I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show my browser. So what you'll see here is this is Cleo Integration Cloud. This is my environment, my CIC Gateway environment here. And so you'll see a couple different tabs, and I'll describe what these are in just a second. But the core of what we do is when we first log in, we're going to get logs. We're going to get history of what's actually happening within the system. So you'll see a whole bunch of these different flows down below, and I can kind of page through these as needed. I can search on these different endpoints. If I'm curious whether a certain partner sent a file in, or if I'm looking for a specific file name, for example, or if I got an email that there was a failure to send an SFTP connection to a particular customer. Well, maybe I have an issue ID I want to search on, for example, or a job number that I'm looking for. So basically, we even at volume, we make this easy to go find what you're looking for in a very succinct way. And I'll just kind of drill into one of these as an example, because what we do is we show not only the originating connection or endpoint, like I said, each of these different little circles is what we term an endpoint. You'll see that in just a second, where we set up the credentials and the URL information, the encryption algorithms, all the fun stuff that goes into these protocols. We set all that up, and then as they're executed, then we connect those endpoints together. So in this case, this AS2 connection was triggered, and the inbound flow went to my on-prem inbox. And this is actually an agent install, like I talked about, that maps to a folder. In this case, this is just a Linux server, and I map to home express files partner one slash inbox. So again, it's a really clean way to see what's happening in real time, and be able to understand where these flows are, especially if something fails. We have a full history of that. So in this successful flow, I can see the file that was transmitted along with, and again, if you're a LexiCom or VLTrader user, you're familiar with some of these logs where I'll see things like, green check boxes mean these were successful steps. Anything red X means that it was a failure. Yellows are warnings, just like you're used to today. But basically, we track everything in terms of here's the inbound file that came in through the AS2 connection. Here's the transfer speed and the total size and the lapse time and transfer ID. And here's the system that we named the file. So basically, again, every one of these steps is documented. So if something does fail, we know exactly where it failed and what led up to it, so we can begin troubleshooting. If it's an issue on the destination side, on the source side, if the file's locked, again, it could be anything, all kinds of number of issues that might pop up. It's B2B integration, B2B connectivity, things will happen. The key is how quickly can we recover from those issues. So yeah, what we see here is, again, really the tooling that lets you, or if you lean on Cleo, lets our team quickly discern exactly what we should go troubleshoot and resolve. So again, if everything's green, maybe I don't care so much about this. It's interesting information. And especially if somebody internally comes back and says, hey guys, I know we got an order, but the ERP actually choked on it and the file's gone. You can actually reissue some of these as well, or ask the customer to go retrigger these if you'd prefer. But yeah, because we keep an archive of all these files, just like you might today with the sent box and receive box, you always have the ability to grab this file down. Maybe there's something strange on here that needs a small edit. Just grab the file. You can download it from here if your user has permissions to do so. Crack it open, do whatever you need to with it. So like I said, that's the jobs view. The beauty is that, again, all out of the box, there's no setup for this. Literally, as soon as you start connecting and running what we call data flows, these different patterns of what's, connecting from one endpoint to another, once you start running these, the jobs just start populating automatically. So it's a really nice way to gain some real-time visibility. And the beauty too is that I can set up whatever users I need to. So in my admin tab here, you'll see I have a bunch of users in this environment. This can be local users that only exist in the CIC world. They could be your internal users as well. So you have a concept of both a normal and an admin type user. And this also, if you're interested, can hook in through SAML. So if you've got like one login or Okta or something like that you use for your corporate login, we can interface, and you can use your same single sign-on credentials to log in here as well. Okay, so that's the outcome, right? So this is a working system. This is the transfers that are happening already. I'm cheating a little bit. So let me show you what it actually looks like to set up an endpoint and to wire these together. So in my network tab here, you'll see a couple things. One is access points. Access points is another name for our agent. And so you'll see here a handful of these that have been kind of faked and set up. I'll just run this really quick, but sample agent install. So if I run something like this, I basically choose an operating system that I want to deploy this to. If I run Windows, for example, I can add a node. And what I get is a little script. All I do is just I copy this out, so I can just simply take all this data here. Whoops, not that one. I copy this out, and I can run this in a PowerShell script, or if it's not a Windows server, but if it's a Linux server instead, of course, I get a slightly different install script. But basically, yeah, you just run that script on whatever server you want the agent to run on, or like you see here, I can have multiple nodes as well. So the beauty is you can make this highly available. Again, I won't go way too into agent just because it's kind of a one-time setup that you have to do. But it's a really straightforward configuration. Once that's installed and set up, then those become locations that we can now map folders. So you'll see down below, I've got a bunch of folders here on this existing agent server that I can communicate with as folders that I can pick up or drop off too. So if I go into my endpoints tab, this is where we manage all of those. So if I create a new connection, for example, a new endpoint, I can choose whatever protocol I need. So like I said before, if this is a file system that uses an agent as an example, all the other ones are down. So I'm going to choose the one that actually works. I'll connect to this, and it actually lets me browse live through this system. So I can go in here to, home, I can go into Cleo, I can go to whatever folder structure I want, and set this up as a location that I can now use as a source or destination in my flows, just like you use today, inbox, outbox, any other folder structures that you're communicating with. It's a really, really clean way if I'm going to set up some kind of file system interface. For any kind of business to business communication, you would use our protocols. So our AS2 protocol, for example, very, very similar to how this is set up in your world today. We follow all the Drummond specifications. We are compliant with effectively any decent AS2 technology. Clio considers themselves as the gold standard here in AS2. We have for a couple decades at this point. This is a protocol that we know inside and out. If you're using AS2, we almost certainly have the support for whatever capabilities you're needing, up to and including certain signature algorithms, certificate handling. We can set things like hash algorithms, and if your customer requires SHA-2 compliant algorithms, easy, that's built in. Triple DES, AES 256. Again, basically these are same thing, one-time setups, but you can negotiate these with your partner. And we have those built-in support for these within here, including TLS 1.3. So if there's anybody that's using really, really new technology, we obviously would require or request that you don't use something like TLS 3.0 or even TLS 1.0. But we do have some customers that run internal processes that maybe this isn't such a huge security issue for them. So same story for like an SFTP connection where I connect through to a server name, for example. So this would be an IP, a machine name, a URL. Directly means it goes from CIC to the partner. If you're using some kind of an internal server that you need to connect to, you can actually, again, proxy through the access point and you can connect internally. Even though the cloud isn't connecting to your internal systems, we proxy through that agent to actually issue the command. So it's a really secure way of setting that up. And the beauty here too is things like SFTP, things like AS2, they're very certificate and key heavy. So we build in all the key and certificate management as part of this as well. I'm just going to kill this for a second. So if I need to run some kind of or if I need to set up some kind of a SSH key or AS2 self-signed certificate, we can build all those within the platform. You can also import your certs and keys here as well. Whether it's your keys, whether it's your partner's keys, and you're just importing the public version, whichever pattern you're following, we support it within here. So yeah, if you want to generate your own self-signed certs, easy, we build that all in. If you want to use a third-party certificate authority, again, same thing, easy, go to them, grab the cert, import it, and we can support it within here very easily. And then the other side that I didn't show is the server side. So like I said, anybody using LexiCom today, partner mailbox is a new capability for you. If you use other SFTP server, you could collapse this down into Gateway, because again, for us, what we do is we support basically four different protocols here. So FTP, which again, I wouldn't recommend using FTP as a protocol, but in certain cases it's absolutely required just because of the systems. At minimum, make sure you're encrypting the payload if you're going to use plain text FTP, because that is literally free to see with anybody that sniffs those packets. FTPS over SSL is an option here. So again, we support FTPS on the server side if somebody wants to connect to our server and log in with certain credentials. SFTP, of course, would use, it's a little bit easier, a little more standard these days. But yeah, if somebody has an SFTP client like FileZilla or CyberDuck or whatever they like, they can connect to this server. And we have a built-in portal as well. So if somebody just needs to upload and download files, like a spreadsheet, for example, or just a zip file with some images from the last day, like they can just simply log into our portal. And the portal URL looks like this. So it's a really basic, very simple URL that they can log into. You set whatever credentials they need down here. So they would log in with a password. If it's SSH, we support key-based auth as well, just as a note. And same thing, we can set whatever folder structure we want underneath that mailbox. We can set any kind of encryption, decryption that we want to happen as a part of that transfer. We can set whatever encryption and hash algorithms are needed. So again, there's a whole bunch of different security components and advanced settings that we can institute here. But the beauty is that it's all built in for all these different protocols. If you need to host a server that clients can connect to using any of these protocols, we have it all built in. It's point and click, and you can set this up as long as you've got enough connections to license this. So the last thing that I'll show really quick is this integrations tab. So what you saw before are we call these data flows. So basically, I need to connect a point A to point B, because if I get certain transactions in on an AS2 connection, well, how do I know where it goes? Today, where you set up an AS2 connection that has a dedicated inbox, we can set up a couple different patterns here as needed. So in the gateway world, where it's endpoint to endpoint, and we don't have any kind of intermediary transformation steps, we're not cracking open the content. We're not really doing much content-based routing here. We're mostly looking at where the file came in from, or where it was found, and then mapping that to another endpoint, another location. So you'll see here I can basically set up my data flows to say, all right, when I pick up a folder or file from this particular folder that lives in my infrastructure, I want to now send it to, maybe I want to load it into a user's download folder, for example. It could be as simple as that. So I can name this Jacob sample flow, and I can actually save this. If I wanted to run this flow and just pick up files from this agent, place them into a user's download folder, that's easy stuff for us. If I wanted to instead have this go to an AS2 connection, for example, I could do that as well. So basically, you can define which endpoints we need to tie together here, and have these basically issue flows, so that when we either find files at this location, or if I change this here real quick, can I go back? If, for example, I'm looking at how would I want to do this? So if I wanted to set up a flow that actually now sends and schedules this process out, I could schedule this action to run at a certain interval as well. Again, just like you have in LexiCom today, you can schedule these out on a minute, hour, day, week, month. You can set up cron scheduling if you want to get really advanced with this scheduling if you need to. But yeah, it's a pretty straightforward way to run this on whatever frequency you need. And then once this is enabled and set up, I'm going to actually unschedule that here, cancel all this. So the end result, coming back to what we saw to start, is the job. So once these are set up, once they're flowing, then every transfer will issue a job. So again, you'll be able to see what's happening in real time. And the last thing is this notifications tab here, just to kind of quickly show you where today you might have to manage things like, email on failure or execute on. So you might have some kind of advanced settings in your LexiCom install today. These are just simply tick boxes for us now. So if I want to receive failures of job notices, I can just simply toggle that option. If I want to know when my agent is down, I can toggle that option. Or when there's certificates and keys that are expiring, I can toggle that option as well. So basically, yeah, the system is mostly set it and forget it. Configure the flows, let them run. If there are issues or adverse events, then great, notify me, tell me about it. Otherwise, do your thing, run unless I get a question, at which point maybe I want to go in and do some quick self-service. That's what this tooling is here for. I don't expect you to sit in front of this 24/7, but I do expect that if a question comes up, you can very easily get to the gateway, log in, and it almost immediately find what you're looking for with some of the search and filter functionality that we have right here. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap. I did have one question in terms of ERP connectivity. So like I said before, if we did want to have an agent that speaks to like an inbound and outbound folder that the ERP or your translator is interfaced to, again, that's where the agent can come in. We can very easily build a bridge to and from those folders, and those data flows would just map a partner protocol, for example, to an internal folder that we want to drop files into. So it's a pretty straightforward setup. It's almost exactly the same type of flow that you run today. It's just a difference of where this infrastructure lives, and again, using our cloud as the gateway and the agent as the communication to your internal infrastructure. So yeah, what I'll offer is if there are questions, let us know. I'm more than happy to either field questions if you've worked with Connor or Evan or Rin or any other folks on the team. Send them questions if you have them, and I'm more than happy to plug in and answer what I can. So I appreciate everyone joining. Thank you all for the attendance and the attention today, and hopefully this is valuable. Let us know if there are any questions, and hope everyone has a wonderful day. Thanks, everybody.